been working from my perspective book and image memory book, and here's my sketchbook of what I've been working on. Okay, so we have planes in perspective, how they would move back in space with tricks on how to get the sizing of how they would get smaller and closer together. Also mirroring planes at angles, which I found super tricky and I had to go through it a couple times. More mirroring planes, and then van der Pol arms, which arms are my weakness, so doing all of these van der Pol studies were really helpful. And then mirroring planes that are at tilts, and then also getting arches in perspective or curved lines in perspective. So what I've been doing is I've been copying the examples that are in the book, but then also making up my own versions of them to make sure that I really understand it, which I get that from my dad, because I know when sometimes you're little and you bring your homework to your parents, sometimes they kind of end up doing it for you, but not my parents. My dad would, well, for math homework, I remember I would take him the problems that I had, and he wouldn't work through the problems that I had on my homework. He would make up his own set of problems going over the same formula or whatever we're learning. So we would work out his problems, so he'd make sure that I would understand it, so then I'd go back to my own homework and have to apply it there. So I'm doing the same thing with the perspective book, making sure, or going through the problems that are given, but then also making up my own versions of them to make sure that I really have it sorted out in my brain. And then lastly, the image memory. I just started doing the first page of exercises, and I'm really pleasantly surprised that I'm doing pretty well with them. So I'm just doing this first page of lines, and you're trying to get the top line to be the perfect length. And so what you do is you stare at the first exercise, and you stare at it for 3 minutes. And what I think is really interesting is what he talks about is you try not to make any judgments like, oh, that line is shorter than the guideline, or you're not like being like, well, it's about a third of the length of the guideline or anything like that. You try and make no judgments, and you just stare at it for 3 minutes. And so what I've been doing is I trace my eye over the line that you're going to copy and then the guideline, and I kind of make my eye go all over it just to try and really get the image to stay in my brain. And so then you put the book away, and then you take out the sheet of paper, and then you try and trace the line perfectly. And here's the sheet where I did my image memory exercises. So the first one, I got it right off the start. I got it perfectly, beginner's luck, super exciting. The other one's not so perfect, but really, really close. So I took a red pen to show where I was off. And so the first one, the second one, I accidentally extended the red line a little bit too much into my pencil. So it's really only a dot. It's like twice the size of that, which is off. This one, I made my line too long, and this one was off by a dot. Since this one was more than a dot, I redid this one, so I did it on the back, and then was just off by a dot. Again, I kind of want to keep pushing forward. I don't know if it's supposed to be perfect. I think it's okay that I'm off by just a hair, but the next set of lines that I'm going to be working on start going into curves then, which I know that's going to be really tricky and hard, so I'm probably going to be off by more than a dot on these. So these will probably take a while for me to really get these nailed down. But it's been actually really fun doing these, and I went on a walk afterwards after doing my perspective and memory training, and I was just looking around, looking at the buildings around me and seeing how they're going back in perspective, and things were just kind of clicking, and then also kind of staring at things and trying holding them in my mind. And I don't know, I just feel like just starting out, I just feel like my awareness has gone up a notch, which is really exciting. But that is all my studying, and I'm going to go into the studio now to work more on my cast. I'm actually a little nervous to go in there and see my painting, because the last time I was working on it, it got really dark, and it was kind of hard to see exactly what I was doing or see it clearly. So I'm a little nervous going in to see if there might be like big value or temperature jumps that I wasn't aware of that I was painting since it was so dark. But I'm just going to go in and see what happens and figure out what I need to work on. So for my cast, I'm seeing that I think I need to have more light kind of spill down from the top part of the cast down onto the stomach. What I'm going to do first, though, is the part that's like where the fabric's folded that goes across the chest. In my painting, I painted it a bit too sharp, so that's the biggest thing that I see that's kind of distracting. So I'm gonna repaint and soften up the that area, and then once I get that done, if I have time today, I'm gonna kind of work across the whole area. So starting in the lightest lights and go down into the stomach to make sure that the light looks like it's really falling down the cast, because I think right now I have too big of a jump for it. I'm finished painting for today, so I softened up the shadows and took away all the sharpness in the wrinkled fabric that goes across the chest, and I flipped my painting upside down just to get like a fresh eye, different view on it, and I saw that I really did need to lighten up the stomach area. So I did that, but I realized like when I finished painting that everything's painted kind of thinly, which I don't really like. I mean, it looks fine from far away, but when you get up close to it, I like the look of how I painted everything else, which is pretty thickly and kind of like pulling paint across each other. But since I painted it kind of thinly, it just doesn't have that interesting look to it. So, and also I'm seeing when I put the painting upside down and look at it really critically, the stomach area, I don't know if it's so evident that it looks like there's a body under the fabric. So I think I'm just gonna come in the next day, work on it, and repaint that whole stomach area again with a lot thicker paint and kind of trying to get more interesting paint strokes in there and make sure that the planes of the body really make sense.